Happy Halloween! I'm Tess,
And I'm Sarah.
and this is the Basically Bookish Podcast.
Today we're finishing our deep dive coverage of We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer.
If you haven't seen our previous episodes, you might be a little bit confused. You should probably start there and then meet us back here when you're done. Or not, we're just happy to have you here with us. But if you are interested, we'll list our earlier episodes in the show notes.
Before we get started, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and find us on social media. We're Basically Bookish Pod on all platforms. Just a little recap. When we left you last time, Eve and Charlie were spending the night in a motel to get away from the house. In the middle of the night, Charlie gets a phone call from Eve's phone number. Eve answers in the bathroom, and on the other end is Charlie's voice, telling Eve she never left the house and to get away from the house as fast as possible. Eve realizes that Charlie that's in the hotel room with her is missing a tattoo on her finger, and Eve decides to take the truck and book it out of there. What is she doing?
What is she doing?
Okay, let's get into it. Let's start out with a correction from last week. I was a little confused. I thought that Eve had lost the locket that Charlie gave her, but it's actually the keys to the house that she lost. And the locket is safely with Eve.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to come into play later, so we just wanted to touch on that before we got started. And then I had another little note just because as I was editing, the opportunity to kind of relive our conversations and then think about things that I wish I had said the first time. And just really quickly, when we were talking last week about the mythical ants, you had kind of related it to it being sort of another experience or another example of the Mandela effect, or kind of how things as they go out through the world and over time they sort of change. And I think that that's a really good theory. But the feeling that I got from the passage was that the ants and like all of the non-native species, like the plants and the animals that pop up around Old House, I feel like it's because there's spaces that don't work within the normal rules of that area. They're kind of like these spaces outside of place and time. And so for me, that was something that kind of pointed to that. Like, it just doesn't behave like other places. So there's these mythical ants that are around. There's these other plants and like the lynx or whatever the large cat was that they saw. That's the vibe that I got. But I mean, both could be right, both could be wrong. That's how I interpreted that.
Yeah, I think along that same lines, I think the way I interpret it was they go into that there's other sites and, the part about remembering which house you're in,
Right.
because I think that all of the sites are linked. And I think that could be another reason why all of the animals and plants like cross over is because they're like portals to each other. And so like there's one in Russia. And so the plants from Russia are coming over and like swapping as the house changes form. I feel like it's like they're like little wormholes almost, but also through time. So through time and space is kind of like how I'm understanding it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then as for the ants, it's like, well, maybe they did exist at some place in time and history, and that's why they're making their way through. But yeah, we really don't know. So cool.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. Starting with chapter 19, and it is called Chase. So the truck that Eve kind of stole from Charlie is running on fumes by the time that Eve pulls into a gas station. It's definitely old, and the gas station has license plates from every state and a few from Canada plastered on one of the walls. It also has a handwritten sign saying that the gas pump is cash only, and so Eve is going to have to go inside to pay. She scrounges up some spare change and some dollar bills from the truck, and she heads inside. As Eve approaches the gas station, she catches a glimpse of herself in the door's reflection. She's definitely seen some better days. She's wearing sweatpants and a dirty t-shirt with her hair pulled up in a big, tangly mess. And she's also only wearing socks. It's definitely not the best look. Meanwhile, me like dropping off my kid to school in the morning. As she's giving money to the cashier, she mistakes him asking if she wants regular for him asking if she wants religion. It really feels like she's starting to unravel at this point.
Yeah.
One of the coins falls off the counter and it rolls away, and Eve goes to retrieve it when she runs into a highway patrol officer who immediately clocks her appearance and the fact that she's only wearing socks. But you can't be arrested for not wearing shoes. So Eve goes back out to the pump and gets some gas, and she gets back on the road to save the real Charlie. But in the back of her mind, Eve is wondering if maybe Charlie called the police, and she's trying really hard not to draw the attention of the cop.
She's acting very paranoid at this point.
Extremely. She's driving back to the house. She's reminded of a childhood memory of a high-speed chase that was televised at the time. They later found out that the person running away from the police believed that the government had wanted them to do a bunch of experimentation on them So the fact that they're being chased by a bunch of police cars definitely didn't help that delusion at the time. And she snaps out of her memory when she sees flashing lights behind her. She's being pulled over by the cop from the gas station. She considers flooring it, but decides to pull over instead. Play along. She can't rescue her family if she's in jail. So the officer asks her some somewhat standard questions like where is she headed, when's the last time she slept. He also asks if she's on any drugs, but everything checks out enough for him to let her go with a pat on the truck and a suggestion to go get some sleep. Okay, so now that little distraction is over, it's time to go save everybody. Do you want to say something?
I was going to say the chase is on, but it's just so cheesy. So never mind that.
As the cop is walking away, he gets a message over his radio, and Eve is convinced that it's about her. So she screeches away, hauling ass to get out of there. And Eve continues to check the rearview mirror as she's going, expecting to see the officer chasing behind her, but no one is there. But she's still not taking any chances, and she's absolutely flying to get back to the house. So Eve is speeding when she comes to the sharp curve to head up to the driveway to the house, and as she's coming around the corner, she's barely letting off the gas. She sees what at first she thinks is a woman, and then she thinks it's a child, wandering across the road. The person is wearing a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and navy green boots. You've seen that before. Eve slams on the brakes, jerks the wheel, and comes to a fishtailing stop. Headlights illuminate the child, who is standing in the embankment. Suddenly, her hands shoot out to her sides. Wrists are limp, almost like she's being crucified. She holds this pose for a few very bizarre seconds.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Reverse. Nothing's that important.
See you later. Then the girl takes a few steps backwards, spins to face the woods, and then she pivots back to face Eve. Suddenly, the girl launches into a sprint, straight towards Eve, who's about to put the truck in reverse and floor it out of there, but at the last minute, the girl swerves right, climbs up the embankment, and runs into the woods.
That might be worse.
Eve decides that this is not her problem, and good for her.
Yeah,
finally.
That's no one's problem, really.
No.
Get out of there.
I didn't see anything. Eve continues her way up to the house with Charlie's warning echoing in her head. You know, the one where Charlie told her to get away from the house and never come back? So,
and not that one.
That's the one. Eve parks at the edge of the lawn. She grabs Charlie's locket and puts it into her pocket. And in her sock-clad feet, she crunches through the frosty yard up to the house, unlocks it, and walks into the foyer. Foyer? Foyer.
Foyer. We're American.
Foyer.
Foyer.
The chapter ends with a transcription from Psychology and Practice magazine. The title of the article is Esteemed Psychologist Fired After Absurd Claims. Apparently, in Norway, a Dr. Bjorn Eriksson began to believe that one of his delusional patients was experiencing real events. The patient was suffering from Capgras syndrome, which is characterized by a person believing that a close family member, friend, or even themselves have been replaced by an imposter, a double, or a replica. Its cause is unknown, but it's believed to be linked to a malfunction in the ability to properly identify facial recognition and emotional responses, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
The doctor claimed that his patient had proof, or quote-unquote breadcrumbs, that point to what happened to him being factual. But the article says that the proof is just blurry photos and random online forum postings. Because the doctor co-signed the delusions, his patient got worse and was forced into a psychiatric facility where he did some self-mutilation. Dr. Eriksson is a world-renowned researcher in the field of delusional misidentification syndromes, but because he co-signed the delusions of his patient, it's unclear if he will be able to maintain the title of doctor. The article has 2 notes in Norwegian, but thankfully I was reading on my Kindle, and so translating it was easy.
That's interesting because in the Audible, I don't think it's translated.
I can't wait for tomorrow's episode. Spoiler, we're going over theories, but I found the Reddit, and there's so much to talk about. So, the first note says that the university that Dr. Eriksson works at says there's no record of him ever working there. The second note is about the self-mutilation. Apparently, the patient removed his own nails with pliers because he thought his hands had been replaced with almost exact replicas. He tried to remove his tongue, but the staff intervened, as they should.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, chapter 20, Spiral. I know I'm spiraling.
Yeah, entering the spiral, the spiraling.
Yeah. I'm right there with her, man. This book stressed me out so much.
Yeah.
Had so much fun reading it, but then every time that I like had to pick it up again, like towards the end, I was like, I don't want to.
Towards the end, it was really getting creepy.
Okay, so chapter 20 is called Spiral. She starts trying to turn on some lights, but the switches aren't working. It would appear that the power is out. She's walking through the house, quietly calling for Charlie, and she half expects the house to be changed, but it seems like everything is where she left it. Until she comes to the kitchen and sees that the table is set for 6. Every table setting laid out with a lot of care, which absolutely freaks out Eve, so she's backing out of the room when Charlie's cell phone buzzes in her pocket. It's an unknown number, but the quote-unquote fake Charlie is on the other line, waiting with Eve to come back or just tell her where she is. But Eve simply ends the call and mutes the phone.
What do you think of that right there?
I thought Eve was out of her mind. I thought she was like, nope, we're just not going to.
Because that's exactly what it would look like, right?
I hate this scene.
Right, I know.
Eve turns back to the kitchen and she sees a figure. It's facing away from her, sitting at the dining room table, completely still and slumped over in a way that's described as a puppet who isn't being held up with their strings. Eve is slowly backing away, trying to get away from this figure, but she bumps into a side table and the noise makes the figure sit up straight with a sudden gasp. And it's pinned straight for a few seconds before it darts to the right and vanishes into the shadows.
No.
No. Just no.
Leave. Just leave.
Make it end.
Yeah. Gas and a lighter and just leave.
Burn it all.
Do us a favor, Eve.
Eve decides maybe it's best to leave when she hears the real Charlie's voice calling for her from the second story, asking for help.
Like, at this point, it's like, what is real versus fake? Like, how would you even know? It's just, that's so disorienting.
It's so disorienting. Inside Eve are 2 wolves. One wants to get the heck out of this house, and the other will do anything to save Charlie and Shiloh. And Eve decides to venture upstairs. I feel like I would be like, this is a bigger problem than I can handle on my own.
Right. Like, I would get the FBI, the president. I want 3 helicopters. Like, just keep an eye on me as I walk in. Leave the doors open.
Yeah. Someone hold my hand.
Yeah, I need an adult.
As Eve is passing Allison's old room, she notices the door is half open and she hears muffled whimpers and labored breathing coming from inside. Charlie? She asks quietly as she steps into the room.
I just know. I feel overly confident I would not find myself in this situation because I wouldn't go back.
At first, Eve doesn't see anything, but she gets hit with a horrible odor. One that reminds her of a time she accidentally stepped on a dead bird as a child. In the corner of the room, she sees the woman from the attic, the one in the hospital gown. Allison? Eve wonders.
I'd be out of there. Just hightail it. That's enough. Your house now. See you.
Yeah. Best of luck to all of you.
Yeah. Whatever you got going on here, goodbye.
The woman in the hospital gown is shaking, quivering, and making this noise that sounds somewhere between laughing and weeping, which we've definitely heard before. She starts speaking in a childlike voice, telling Eve that she has to hide, which is when Eve notices the woman is holding a hammer, and we are in hell.
Eve equally learns things too early and too late. Equally.
Yes.
What do you mean she's holding a hammer?
Does not need to be told twice. And she bolts back downstairs and makes a beeline for the front door. But it's locked from the outside. She goes to the nearest window, but there are metal bars blocking her escape. She looks around and realizes all of the windows are barred. What the fuck?
And how long has that been? That's not been very often.
That's new.
That's new.
Development. Handyman Thomas over here.
Yeah, real quick, overnight.
Eve is listening to see if the woman is even following her when she hears her voice coming through the ceiling vent. 15, 14, 13. Okay, so we're playing a messed up game of hide and seek.
No,
Full circle, baby.
No. Yeah, the spiraling for me is that each turn of this book is a lot like the last one, just a little different.
Yeah, it's so well written, honestly. It's very, very good. Eva is in the kitchen again, and she tries the back door. It's also locked from the outside. She's looking around, and she sees the basement door has been left open, because of course it has. At the same time, she hears the woman coming down the stairs, and it sounds like she's moving really freaking fast. So Eve plunges herself into the darkness of the basement. Here we are again. We're playing hide and seek in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Eve's turn. Eve is moving through the basement as quietly as she can when she comes to a room that has brick pillars, rickety beds, and a wheelchair. That's weird. But she continues on.
Yeah, she's just not asking enough questions at this point
Not
either.
at all. More ahead of her, she sees a soft flicker of an orange light in the darkness, and she heads towards that. She slips through the place where she's pretty sure that Jenny was hiding at the beginning of the book. And in the far wall, she can see an olive green door that's cracked open, and that orange light is coming from within. On the center of the door is a carving. It's of a cryptic glyph. Can you guess what it is? It's the circle.
Yeah.
Yep, with all of the intersecting lines. Here we go. Eve gets a weird feeling about the door, but decides to go into the room anyway. When she's inside, she shoves a chair under the door handle so at least she'll hear it if Allison comes into the room. Eve notes that the room looks more like an abandoned mine. The ceiling is lined with long dead tree roots, and the room is being held up by these makeshift support beams. In the room, Eve finds boxes and stacks of paintings, old paintings. The paintings depict the house in different iterations, half-built, fully renovated, abandoned, covered in snow, burned to a crisp. And there is one very odd one that depicts all of the windows and doors swarmed with tiny black dots. The ants, maybe?
Ew.
So Eve is wondering if Thomas's mother painted all of them, and she finds a painting that actually has people in it. It's a family portrait in American Gothic style, and the family's made up of two very severe and serious-looking parents, a young girl who looks a lot like Jenny, and also looks somewhat hopeless, and a young boy that looks a lot like Thomas. As Eve inspects the painting more closely, she notices something seems off about Thomas in the painting. His dimensions aren't quite right, almost like he was painted in later by an artist that wasn't as talented. Eve touches the painting and she realizes that the painting of him also feels different from the rest of the painting, like almost like it's acrylic instead of oils. And she moves her finger, and as she moves her finger, a part of his face smears, and the imagery is so creepy.
Yeah, as if it was almost like wet, like it was just painted.
Yeah. She sets the painting aside and looks into another box. This one is full of photos. The photos are snapshots of the family from the painting, but the people in the photos look different. They look relaxed. They look happy. The father has a full beard and neck tattoos. Mother has a red pixie cut and these bright green eyes, just like her daughter. And the daughter has this really bubbly energy that just radiates through the photos. And Eve continues to look through the photos, and Thomas isn't in any of them. In another photo, Eve notices something. It's a photo of the father. He's tuning an electric guitar and he's wearing a band shirt with that same circle glyph on it. The same symbol that Allison allegedly started carving everywhere. On his shirt, it says Ring of Eyes, and it's printed in metal-style lettering. It definitely does not seem like the puritanical father that Thomas had told her about earlier. Eve looks at the photo more and describes it as a three-person selfie, taken by a girl of about 17, who she assumes is Allison. Her mother is beside them, swinging a beer, wearing a black Sabbath hoodie, and giving her husband a playful look. And at their feet is a happy but blurry and out-of-focus chocolate lab, who we can assume was Buckley. What did you think about all this?
I think that I was starting to get the idea that Thomas really was lying, especially when she smeared the paint and it was wet. I was like, oh, he was later. Like he came later. And that it kind of made sense that he wasn't telling all of the right story. And then when I heard about like the Black Sabbath and the neck tattoos, I was like, oh, he's completely fabricated this family. And it kind of seemed more like his own family, like Paige and Newton and Kai and Jenny.
Right.
And that's where the spiraling again. It's like every iteration of the house is like a perverse previous iteration. It's like changed in just a way, like this terrifying labyrinth.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah. And it's like spiraling tighter each time.
So Eve continues looking through these photos. There's birthdays, beach holidays, metal concerts, hockey games, no Thomas. He's not even in the formal family portraits. So Eve digs to the bottom of the box and she finds a crumpled up ball of paper. It's a note. It's one that Eve thinks that Allison probably wrote to herself. And we gotta read it. Should I take it from here? Let's see. 46. Oh, stop. I do not invite this energy into my life. Just so you know, universe.
It's enough to make you pray.
I'm gonna cry.
I know. Having a physical copy of it is terrifying on another level.
Okay, so on page 246, are not who they say you are. Thomas, quote, Faust is not your brother. He's been living crossed out, trapped here since long before the house was built, before the trees were planted. He changed your memories, warped your family, forced himself into your life. Despite what everyone around you says, your name is not Alina. It is Allison Faust. Your father is Elijah and your mother is Vera. The religious zealots who replace them are not real, they are mimics. They may look like your parents, but they are not. Never forget that. Thomas, or whatever force controls him, wants to drive you mad, wants you to stay locked up here forever. He's making you see things, making you doubt your own sanity. What are his motives? He's pulling you into a labyrinth that you might never escape. It's like quicksand. The more you fight the charade, the worse it gets. There's only one way to stop it. You have to play along, wait for the right moment, then make Thomas angry or afraid. Do something extreme, something that will make his mask slip. Make him show his true face. Then you strike. And the chapter ends there.
Just like full body sustained chills for the whole time. When she says that Thomas is not your brother, he's not who he says he is, I was like, no, run, run, everyone run. Just start running. Wherever you are,
Everybody.
get up and run. This chapter is called Labyrinth. It's terrible, the whole thing. Heather's words are swirling in Eve's head about Allison thinking that the only way to get her old life back is to kill Thomas. Eve is standing in the darkness when she looks down and sees a trail of ants, and she decides that she's going to follow this trail of ants in the darkness. I think that it's because it's just like complete darkness down there, and she sees this one little moving thing, and so she's not scared at all. I have no idea why, but she follows the trail of ants.
I think the trail of ants is also kind of leading towards that orange light, so she's trying to see like what that's all about.
Yeah. She's just kind of like seeing the light shine off of them, and just it's sort of like calling her in like a light would to like a bug. And so she's just sort of like following it in, I think, against her better judgment. She follows the ants to a sudden and inexplicable hospital corridor, which we've kind of gotten a glimpse of as we've gone down there. The ants lead down the hallway of this black and white checkered floor again. They lead her down the hallway to her toy. Mo, the chimp, is just sitting there on the floor, playing its noise and making a bunch of noise as she's walking up. And so she just sort of walks right up to it and instinctually picks it up and turns it off. I would have not touched that thing, but she felt like she should just scoop it right up into her arms. The ants don't walk into Mo the chimp. As soon as they get close to it, just like the girl in the ditch, as soon as they get close, they just go around it. And so it is almost as if they're leading her right to it, but then that's not exactly why she's supposed to be there. So she continues on and she follows them. The ants take her to Charlie, or rather, what's left of Charlie. Her eyes are closed and the ants are circling her feet. At this point, by the time Eve gets there, there's thousands of ants, maybe tens of thousands of ants. This Charlie is old and near dead. It looks like this Charlie's been here for decades and is starving. Charlie's color sort of matches the gray of the house around her. And Eve finally calls out Charlie's name. And in response, Charlie opens her mouth and exposes bloody gums.
But her eyes stay closed.
Yes, her eyes stay closed. And the ants take that opportunity with her mouth open in this sort of silent scream to start swarming up her legs, and they're covering her body. They're like crawling up the side of her. They're going all over her arms and leg and up her neck. They start climbing into her eyes. And Charlie is just standing there motionless the entire time. And the ants are just covering her. At one point, I think Eve describes it as like an armor of ants, like this entire bodysuit of ants all over her. And they're all just like writhing in and out, and they're all entering into her mouth and into her ears and into her eyes. Then finally, one final ant is remaining. And the last visual that we're given on that is that an ant slips through her teeth.
It's giving Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, it's so not good. I am just racing through these pages because it's so scary. No, this part. Charlie then turns to her and asks Eve, "What are you doing here? Eve, you're not supposed to be here yet," and looks behind her. Eve looks behind her as well and sees nothing. Charlie says, "She's almost here. You have to hide," and runs off and hides. Charlie runs off and hides. What is happening? Why are we in this house? At this point, I would have just been running. I would have grabbed everything I could find, just swinging. Then suddenly, Eve sees the woman with the hammer. Her eyes, Eve notices, are bright green. So Eve is running. She's trying to get away. She's trying to hide and stay in the darkness. She's feeling the walls with her hands to try to find a place where she can hide. And she reaches like a seam and she suddenly falls through a door onto a black and white tile again. She tries to shut the door behind her, but it won't lock. It doesn't have a lock on it. She looks around the room and she sees this like wardrobe, this old wardrobe in the corner or in the back of the room. So she decides to jump inside of the wardrobe and hold the doors of the closet shut. The woman walks into the room and sort of like looks around for her, but cannot find her. And Eve is inside the wardrobe holding her breath. I hate these kinds of moments. It's so scary. I'm holding my breath during this. And the woman seems satisfied that that's the other thing that I was thinking, that the woman kind of like looks around the room but then doesn't see her and is just about to leave. And I'm thinking in my head, why would the woman just leave knowing that it's just this empty little room? But I think it's again because of those portals that we've talked about, like the things that connect the houses. I think that you can just disappear in the back of rooms in these houses, and Allison's probably like somewhat used to that. So she's like, okay, she must have disappeared. And so she's just about to leave when Eve has been holding her breath this entire time, and she inhales sharply because she's finally just gotten to the point where she can't hold her breath anymore. The woman sees her, looks through the crack of one of the wardrobe and sees Eve standing there. She looks deeply into Eve's eyes, and Eve just suddenly begins drowning in Allison's memories. It's her entire lifetime. We see Allison as an only child to two loving parents, a childhood filled with so much happiness and love. Then a boy wanders out of the woods, a young Thomas. Full chills again. And after that, Allison's parents turn into religious zealots. Eve sees the house changing. She sees her parents changing, becoming confused, thinking that Thomas was their only son and that Allison came out of the woods. And at the same time, she's feeling all of the pain that this is causing Allison, all of the confusion as everything's falling apart around Allison. Eve sees Allison's memory of stabbing Thomas, and Allison saw it as the only way to get her old life back. Then it's darkness again. Allison running through the woods covered in blood. Allison in a hospital strapped to a bed. Allison's begging them to believe her that her name isn't Alina, it's Allison. Eve is now very confused. She's now seeing Allison with this newfound sadness and respect. The entire time they're just staring at each other through a crack in the wardrobe. And there's this sudden break in the fear that Eve had regarding Allison. And I think that the malice that Allison had towards everyone, because Allison then leaves without doing anything. And it's silence for a long time outside of the wardrobe as Eve just sits there sort of processing this. I think she's just afraid to leave because she doesn't know where Thomas is. And within a few seconds, footsteps approach, and it's Thomas, only he's younger and he no longer has gray hair. He sees the hammer that Allison left and sort of does a gesture like scratching his head, like, why would that be there? But just leans down, picks it up, and places it on one of those corkboard hooks in the room and leaves. Eve is still waiting in the wardrobe, but she decides that it's time to go find Charlie and Shiloh and get out of this place. So she opens the door to the wardrobe and she sees the actual basement corridor. So the house has changed again, and it's itself again somehow, and no longer the hospital. She hears noises upstairs and she wants to go up into the living room.
But I think that the house isn't like exactly the same. She notices that like the basement hallway that was like previously like pretty bad repair, it's now like fully refurnished, right? Like, or like refinished.
Right. Yeah, it's in like another form of itself. There's like like you were saying earlier, there's the refurbished portion of it, like when it goes into disrepair, when it goes into the hospital corridor, there seems to be like different takes that the basement takes. And yeah, it's more the recognizable one for her. She knows where to go now. The voice in her mind that is Mo tells her that she doesn't know what's upstairs. And so with that little prompting, she goes back into the room she was in with the wardrobe and grabs the hammer off of the wall. The next chapter is called Home, and she walks down the corridor, listens through the ceiling. Yeah, I did find the map of the basement at this point to be a little confusing. I had to listen to it several times, but she walks down the corridor, listens through the ceiling because there's usually little cracks through the wood portion of the floor on the first floor and the basement, and there's usually like a little bit of light cracking through, and so that's what she's kind of looking at and listening to as she walks. And she's made her way through toward the unfinished garage portion of the house that is now a game room. So we're now in the refurbished version of the house. She doesn't see anyone there, and she starts to head upstairs. She hears voices, glasses, and she thinks there's a party happening upstairs. She smells a yummy meal. So she listens in and she hears Paige and Thomas and the family are upstairs looking for her. She's trying to leave and get out of there without them noticing, but all the doors that she's tried are locked from the outside still. And the windows are barred, like you mentioned, so she can't get out. She can hear them in the other room, and she's sort of like trying to stay out of the living room when suddenly Thomas grabs her, asking her where she is going, and he sees the hammer in her hand and takes the hammer from her and asks her what she's doing with it. In that moment, she's telling herself that she remembers the house is like quicksand. The more you struggle against the illusion, the more elaborate the illusion is going to get. He tells her that she needs to get it together, or he's going to call the ward again, and then calls her the name Emma. And he says that he can't have their Aunt Emma running around the house. Then he says, "You're my sister. I can't have this instability." And Eve starts to doubt herself almost immediately, even in this first interaction with Thomas. And she's starting to think that maybe she is Emma. The voice in her head says maybe Thomas has always lived here, even before the house, and that maybe the only way to deal with Thomas is to that maybe she should, but it just cuts off. It trails off before she finishes the thought, but she decides that she's going to play along with Thomas. And I'm not really sure I understand her reasoning in this, but I think that she's trying to get with Charlie and Shiloh back without upsetting the house too much. And I think she thinks Thomas represents that. And then Thomas asks her if she's taking her meds, and she says yes. He asks her if she wants to rejoin them at the table, that he'll tell the kids that their aunt had to get something in the basement, and she agrees. He tells her she is part of the family, that he knows that she'll come out of this on the other side, and really having like a familial moment with her. It's getting very confusing. Eve thanks him and decides to follow him downstairs. At the end of this chapter, there is a document called Doc RIP, and it's the obituary of Elijah Faust. The dates are redacted, but it talks about his life as a high school hockey champion that received an injury that caused him to retire. And then he started a band when he got a BA in music theory. The name of the band that he started is Ring of Eyes, and he played the lead guitarist and backup vocals. He met his wife, Vera Krause, at Yale as well, and it says that they bought a house on Stray Dog Hill and started a family. At the end of the article, it says he is survived by his daughter, Allison Faust.
Which just proves again that Allison Faust was a real person, not this Alina character.
Alina.
All right, here we go. Let's finish this book.
Let's do it.
So we're on chapter 23, the penultimate chapter of this book. It is called Family Troubles. Thomas leads Eve into the kitchen where the family's waiting, staring at Eve like she's the one who doesn't belong there. Thomas is prodding Eve to calm down, and it's extremely eerie because it seems like they're all sort of walking on eggshells around her, except Paige, who is just openly hostile. Eve is rationalizing to herself that she just needs to play along and try to get herself out of all of this. And she tells the family that she was just looking for some tools to hang up some paintings. Kids nod along, but Paige isn't buying it. Shiloh trots into the room, and she goes right up to Thomas and starts begging him for food. He gives her a little scratch behind her ears and calls her by her name. Good girl, Shiloh. but no begging. He tells her to go to bed, and as the dog starts to leave, she notices Eve in the room. She sees Eve, tenses up, and starts whimpering. And Thomas tells Shiloh that it's okay, she knows Emma. This is unhinged.
Yeah, I was like flipping back, like, where did she, why is she doing this?
Like, the dog couldn't possibly be in on it and trying to
Right.
trick her as well.
Right. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. And the way, well, continue, you'll see the next thing.
Thomas looks at Eve and tells her that Shiloh will get used to her one of these days. The family is acting wholeheartedly that Eve is their mentally unstable Aunt Emma who's living with them for the time being and just wandered off in the middle of dinner. It's like diabolical. Paige cuts in and lets the kids know that their quote unquote auntie will be moving out soon. And we're also getting this imagery of Paige cutting into an undercooked steak and the blood oozing out onto the plate. And I just want to say, hats off, Mr. Kliewer. I personally love it when food is used as a motif in art. If it's rotting and full of maggots, if it's bloody, if it's beautiful but no one's touched it, there's always something about that that just like hits the right little spot in my brain. So the boys
Very
are...
primal.
Yeah. So the boys aren't paying much attention, but Jenny's staring at Eve, head tilted to the side like she notices something's off. What happened to the tattoo on your wrist? Jenny asks Eve/Emma. Thomas lets Jenny know that their aunt never had a tattoo on her wrist. You must have a case of the gets, he chuckles to her. And again, isn't that what he said that his dad used to say about...
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Paige cuts back in. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say that it's just a little tidbit that Eve thought that same thing about Charlie that now Jenny is thinking about Eve. It's just more evidence that everybody's under the influence of the changes.
Paige cuts back in, asking Eve/Emma about the apartment search and letting her know in a hollow and rehearsed way that they're behind her and she's already come through so much. It's patronizing and it's insincere. And Eve is trying to keep her calm, but she's just about ready to flip the table and start screaming until they take her to Charlie, which would probably convince them of her instability.
Nobody's believing you're sane at this point, Eve.
Thomas asks Jenny about what she did in school that day, and she tells a cute little story about a dog coming to class. It's almost wholesome, and it is making Eve irate. Paige asks Eve about her friend in the city, Charlotte. Do you still own that apartment in Portland? Maybe Eve can go there. Eve's little ears are perking up. Charlotte. Of course, Charlie is Charlotte here. Thomas is saying how Eve can always stay with them for a little bit longer, which makes Paige grumble as she gets up to get a bottle of Eve's favorite red wine. And I can already picture this scene, the screen adaptation, like perfectly.
Right. Yeah, the book is a perfect movie.
Paige grabs a corkscrew, sits back down with a bottle of wine. Her eyes are fixed on Eve as she starts twisting it into the bottle. A gust of wind hits the house and the lights sputter and then go out. The family's lit by the uneven orange glow of the fireplace, and Thomas walks off to grab some candles. Paige continues to glare at Eve as she pushes the corkscrew into the bottle before pulling out the cork with an audible pop. She maintains eye contact as she pours herself a glass of wine to the brim.
Yeah, me too.
Just then, Eve notices a necklace around Paige's throat. It's Charlie's locket. Where did you get that? Eve whispers, shaking with rage. Paige is unfazed. Where did she get what? The necklace. Paige says that she found it earlier in the day at a thrift shop, and she opens it up. It's empty. And Paige says that she doesn't know what she's going to put in it yet.
Convenient.
And in this moment, Eve shoots to her feet, pushing away from the table and leaving dishes rattling. Paige is confused, asking, Emma, what's going on? Saying if she said something to upset her, she didn't mean to. But before Eve can really comprehend what she's doing, she grabs the corkscrew and Paige and presses the corkscrew against the side of Paige's throat. Things are escalating.
Very much so.
The kids are freaking out, and Thomas comes back into the room. Stay right there, Eve says to Thomas. He lays down what he's carrying, and he tries to calm her down. We're okay. Everything's okay. She's not going to do anything. He tells the kids to go up into their rooms and lock their doors, and at first they're frozen in place, and he screams, now, and they scatter. Thomas is trying to placate Eve. Emma, can we just... My name is Eve. What? My fucking name is Eve, she screams.
Finally.
Thomas is very much acting like he's in a hostage situation, saying, okay, Eve, let's just put down the weapon. Paige is silently weeping and looking at her husband, pleading. It is chaos. What the F happened to Charlie, Eve wants to know. Thomas says they broke up a few years ago, and can she please just let Paige go? Shut the F up, Eve yells. Just wants to know what's going on. Thomas tells her that he can call Charlie, but Eve knows that he's going to call the police, so she needs him to drop the phone right now. Thomas is pleading some more, saying he knows she hasn't been taking her medication, and that's all this is. Paige is pleading with Thomas. Fake Shiloh comes into the room, growling, barking. Again, it's chaos. And again, we have that moment again circling the moment between her and Kai.
Right.
Suddenly, Eve feels a sharp pain in her thigh and realizes that Paige has stabbed her with a steak knife. But the pain makes her spasm involuntarily, and she punctures the side of Paige's throat with a corkscrew. Paige sways, quote unquote, like a bowling pin, and she topples forward.
I knew that Paige woman was going to lose her cool at some point. I knew she was going to stab first.
Did you?
I just had a feeling she was just the whole time how he's describing her is just so buttoned up, but like you can see the anger. I was just like, she's going to freak out, I think.
Yeah.
But also this knowing everything that we know about Eve and having her go through that scene, I think was so fascinating because that's exactly what it would feel like if you were completely sane, but everybody was treating you as if you were having some sort of a mental health break or something like that. You know, I think that that's exactly what it would look like. You would be playing along, they would be placating you, and it's just an interesting way to frame it.
Yeah. Thomas rushes towards his wife, huddling over her in shock as Eve backs out of the room. It's very like Homer Simpson into the bushes. Shit.
No, she didn't, I don't think she intended to kill anybody.
No.
Or to stab anyone.
Not Paige, at least.
Yeah.
Eve is trying to convince herself that this is not real as she hobbles down the hallway, pulling the knife from her leg. She sees the hammer that Thomas took from her. She grabs it. She doesn't know what she's about to face, and she doesn't want to be unarmed. Eve hears Thomas on the phone with 911. He gives the address of 3710 Heritage Lane. What is the address of this house?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think one single time I think it started out as 3707, 3709, and now 3710.
But Eve is trying the front door again, still locked from the outside. She tries to pry it open with a hammer, but it's not working. She hears Thomas scream. It's animalistic, full of grief and rage, and she knows that Paige is dead. Emma! He yells. It's time to go. It's time to go
Time to get
now.
out of there. Yeah.
He runs upstairs and starts trying doors. They're all locked except for Allison's. Eve enters the room, and in the far corner, she sees Allison in a bloody nightgown, green fountain pen in hand. I didn't know, I'm sorry, she's saying. The door bursts open, and Thomas tackles Eve. We trusted you, he yells. We let you into our home. He's grabbing her, slamming her head into the wall. It's brutal. There's an incident with a hammer that happens that I will not be retelling in detail for fear I will vomit. But you know the one. You know what happened. If you didn't, read the book.
Please.
Eve is holding the hammer, and Thomas is at the receiving end. Teeth are flying. It's very graphic. Yeah. Thomas starts sobbing. He's crumpled in on himself. He does not seem like a monster. He seems like a man who is trying to help his sister, and then she killed his wife and physically harmed him in an extreme way. It made me feel sick, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Eve is second-guessing herself. What has she done? Paige was an accident, but she's not a killer. She doesn't want to kill Thomas. Eve is staggering back out of the room. She's halfway into the hall when Thomas's eyes snap up to her. Where are you going, Eve? And he gives her a mangled smile. I'm having a horrible time. How are you doing?
Yeah, just not well at all. I really think she should just get out of there and should not have come back. She should have listened to Charlie.
Eve jumps out of the room and she pulls the door shut. She's starting to think about the window in the attic. Maybe she can get to it. Maybe she can use it to get out of the house. Maybe she can just jump. She pulls down the stairs and climbs into the attic. The entire time, Allison's door stays shut, and she's wondering if maybe Thomas has passed out. She gets the window open, and she's about to crawl onto the roof when a hand grabs her by the ankle and drags her back inside. Surprise, it's Thomas!
No surprise at all.
And he's got some really strange things to say. Evelyn Patricia Palmer, he gave you life, he says in this voice that kind of sounds like a evangelical pastor. We were here when the light of the day was born. They're fighting. He's trying to strangle her. She is like a wild cat, thrashing and struggling. We sowed the forest, Thomas said. Eve sees the tire chains and she grabs them as she's starting to pass out. We built the foundations of the... He's cut off as she whacks him in the head with the chains. Thomas is still kind of rambling about the foundations of the light of day, kind of sounding like a broken, skipping record. And then he says, I didn't mean, my name isn't. And I'm so curious, is he a victim too? But Eve has had enough. She wraps the chains around his throat and she pulls them. Just then, 2 cops are in the room, guns drawn, yelling at Eve to let him go. It's the cop from the gas station and another officer. Eve is led through the house in cuffs. Jenny peeks out of her room, green eyes full of dread. Eve is walked downstairs. There's another chandelier that's hanging. It's made of antlers, and it's framed by a stained glass window. As she's walked out to the patrol car, a handful of neighbors are in the lawn watching. Eve notices Heather there, along with her supposedly deceased husband, Michael. Standing off to the edge of the forest, Eve sees Allison. She's still in her hospital gown, but she seems somehow transformed. Her face is fuller. She seems full of life. She also looks somehow remorseful, and she slips between the pines. There's a woman right there, Eve tells police. Thomas, he isn't... I didn't mean to, She's put into the back of the police car, and they shut the door. The chapter ends with a document called Bloodbath. It's an excerpt from a pre-production episode for a documentary series called America's Bloodiest Crimes. The editor's note says it's a way to incorporate Emma Faust's interrogation footage into the episode. In a nutshell, the document reads like any viral true crime show or podcast that we'd see today. They set the scene by saying that everything started with an act of kindness from a brother reaching out a hand to his struggling sister. The quote-unquote Faust family bloodbath, insanity, vengeance, or paranormal is the name of the episode. I get the feeling that this incident, in this timeline anyway, has been made into a highly publicized story that aligns with Thomas's recounting of events. Emma Faust is still claiming her innocence and insists that her name is Evelyn Palmer, who is a person that by all records does not exist. The person conducting the police interview, interestingly, is Detective Kieran, who also conducted the Andrew Melvin interview in the hoax documents. So, and if you forgot, that's the kid that went into the abandoned house and his friend ended up comatose.
And what do you think of it being Officer Kieran? What do you think that does to the timeline? Does it change it for you? Is he part of it?
I don't know. Maybe he's part of it.
Another character, yeah.
Yeah. In the interview, Eve/Emma mentions the man in the cabin and how he has a scar that matches, but she doesn't finish. Kieran told her that they found the cabin, but it's burned to a crisp. The editor's note goes on to say that the police believe that Emma had been told that night that she was going to be evicted from the family home, and that was her motive for doing what she did. In the interview, Eve begs the detective to find her parents. They can identify her. And he lets her know that he has found the people she said were her parents, and they didn't have any children. Well, he must have the wrong couple, right? He shows her a photo of them outside of their home. Eve clearly recognizes them. She looks happy even. They have no memory of her. Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. I was jaw just hanging at this point. I was like, what is it?
We also find out that these people have gotten an influx of emails and harassment from a fringe group of devoted people who believe that Eve is suffering from real events. This entire document gives us the feeling that Eve's story has gotten huge and taken on a bit of a life of its own. Detective Kieran was getting visibly fed up with Eve, and he lets it slip that Thomas is in the hospital clinging to life. He's alive, Eve says. She's suddenly panicking. She's got to get out of there. She tries to stand, struggling with her restraints. She's absolutely freaking out. The footage ends, but we're told that officers came in to subdue her.
What? I wanted to say 3 things really quick. The first thing, I wasn't sure if you were going to mention it, and so I wanted to say it. When they're in the house with Shiloh, and Thomas is telling Shiloh, trying to feed her scraps or telling her no scraps at the table, there's a moment where Shiloh looks over at Eve and whines. And it's almost as if the dog knows that there's something going on, that he recognizes Eve, or that they're both being like controlled by Thomas. But there is like this moment where they share a little side-eye glance, and Shiloh whines at her. And then which I thought also sort of supported the next thing I'm going to say, which is, if Evelyn Palmer didn't exist, Thomas himself called Evelyn by her full name. And so, And then the third thing I was going to say is when the people contact are berating the police department saying that they think that Eve is going through something real, it kind of made me think that maybe it wasn't just the plants and the animals and the house that changed, but the house is pulling people in through its other portal houses and changing them. And that's why you can remember, like, the people are just like the plants and the animals that are getting transported. Because what if and I'm getting into theories now, but what if because it's Officer Kieran who interviews the boys, I'm wondering if that's happening simultaneously the night that Eve and Charlie aren't in the house, that it's happening like at that same time, I wonder if those things are all related and if they're happening all on top of each other. Or anyhow, continue.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, when Shiloh looked at her, I was like, the gig is up. I know she's real. I know all of this is fake. She's got to be Evelyn Palmer. I kind of felt like the dog.
I feel like we interpreted that different because I felt like when she started whining, that's when Thomas was like, oh, it's fine. You know her. But again, like maybe that was like Shiloh being like, something's off here. Like, wait a minute.
That's my owner, but you think that it was like, who's this weird lady?
Right.
Like she's going
to, that's how Thomas plays it off, right? He's like, she'll warm up to you.
Yeah, but like in that moment, I was like, no, the dog, she recognized her. And like Thomas is trying to play it down, but like, that's Shiloh, But anyhow.
Possible. So possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so last chapter.
Yes.
Give us a comment if you are enjoying this book as much as we are, please. So, chapter 24 is called Old Wounds. It starts out, everyone keeps calling me Emma Faust, but my name is Eve Palmer. My current residence is 3709 Heritage Lane. Find out that in official documents, Thomas owns the house. Eve is Emma, and all the people in their lives, including Heather, have the same story. Thomas's story. Eve says that it's like she's been forced into a different reality, or like everything around her has changed. She's been in a psychiatric ward because, luckily, I guess, the jury did find her innocent due to insanity, which actually kind of feels worse for Eve. She's in a small room, a rickety bed, with a small window overlooking a pond. It's definitely a throwback to a scene that we've seen before, which adds to the general disorientation of the narrative. It's confirmed again that the quote-unquote Faust family bloodbath has become an international headline. Eve has been working to carefully convince her doctors that she's learning, healing, repentant, calm. She wants to get out of this place and find the real Charlie still. And she just feels like she needs to play along for long enough. Eve, at this point, has internalized that whatever happened to her, the people around her aren't playing some kind of elaborate trick. They truly don't remember her. And if they remember her at all, they know her as Emma. About 6 months into her incarceration, Eve gets a hold of Charlotte on the phone. Eve asks why they broke up, and Charlotte tells her that one day, out of nowhere, in the middle of the night, she found Eve packing up all of her things. Eve barely said a word to her, she just left. When Eve presses her again, why, Charlotte says that she's been trying to figure that out ever since.
That was heartbreaking.
Yeah. Charlie is crying and obviously upset, telling Eve that she'll always love her, but she can't do this anymore. And she really hopes that Eve gets the help that she needs before Charlotte hangs up. Life goes back to a monotonous normal in the psych ward, with Eve sometimes doing research about what happened to her and trying to find proof, and also with her considering maybe she just does need to get better and get some help. And then one day, she gets a visitor. She goes to the visitation room, and who do you think is waiting for her? It's the real Charlie!
Yay!
No, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm kidding.
Not.
It's Thomas.
For a second, I was like, no.
Eve has immediate chills up her spine. Thomas is sheepish, hesitantly smiling at her. His face is healing up pretty well. The scar doesn't look too bad considering. And are those dental implants? Which I also feel like is something that she noticed about him the first time she saw him as well.
Right.
I was too lazy to go back and verify, but let us know in the comments if that's true. So, Thomas again, sheepish and unsure, tells Eve that it's okay if she's not ready to talk. She's not. He monologues ever. He monologues to her/himself about how much she meant to him when they were kids. He tells her the story about Buckley and how one day the dog just bit him out of nowhere, and their parents tried to find him a new home, but no one would take him, so he had to be put down. Thomas said that his parents didn't know how to be there for him, but she, Emma/Eve, did. She just sat with him. She was just there with him. She didn't try to teach him a lesson. She just let him know that sometimes it's okay to feel like shit. And as he's talking to her, Eve is just like barely looking at him. Thomas, however, is tearing up, again telling her it's okay if she doesn't want to talk. He says with everything he's been through, losing Paige, recovering from his injuries, raising his kids alone, he's turned back to the church and he's found his faith again. He lets her know that he knows she wasn't in control of her actions, that she has a condition, and she's getting help for it. And he leans forward slightly and asks her to look at him. Eve stares blankly into his eyes. Thomas gives her a sad smile and tells her he forgives her. Dude, lock me up again because I would be irrational.
Yeah, for sure.
He forgives
She
her.
won't even look at. Yeah, she won't even. She's just like.
She's in a mental institution. Her life is ruined.
Because you wandered out of the woods, possibly twice.
My notes say Eve is a bigger man than I am because she says nothing, letting everything unsaid just rot between them. Thomas gets up. He's about to leave, but then he pauses to give something to Eve. I know it meant a lot to you and Charlie, he says, and he hands her an envelope and leaves the room. After he's gone, Eve just sits there in stunned silence. Why would he call her Charlie? She opens the envelope, and inside of it is Charlie's locket. Inside of the locket is the only known photo of Eve Palmer.
Chills. Such a good ending. It was as complete as it could be as a cliffhanger. I feel like it left the proper amount of unease. You have just as much, I think, evidence on one side as the other.
Yeah.
Because you've got him saying Charlie, him calling her Evelyn, Shiloh looking at the lockets there.
Yes, and we get one more document and one more piece of evidence. The chapter ends with a transcript of a post on highstrangenessforums.net. The poster states that their partner went missing, but everyone in their lives tell them that they never existed to begin with. They state that they and their partner recently purchased a house, and when they returned to the house, they found it boarded up and abandoned with no sign of their partner. They found their dog wandering the nearby woods alone, and all evidence of them and their partner's life together, including photographs, texts, emails, everything vanished overnight. Everyone in the poster's life says that the partner never existed, and the poster has also almost been institutionalized multiple times, but they aren't giving up. That's Charlie.
So you think it's Charlie? Yeah, because that would be what Charlie came home to, was just it all boarded up. This one just left me scratching my head. I have no idea.
Man,
It was such a ride.
So excited to talk to you about theories.
I know, I can't wait to talk about theories too. That's going to be so exciting. I know I want to say things, but I won't.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Wow, that was terrifying. I loved it.
If you need to know more about Old House like we do, join us tomorrow as we explore Reddit theories and try to unravel some of the puzzles and hidden messages that we missed on our first read-through. Sarah, you are right. It is Morse code, and people have deciphered it.
Yes! Yay! I love book people. I just love book people. You know what? That little thing that's itching in your mind, let's go investigate it together. I love it. This book just gets more and more bizarre as we learn more and more about it.
It's currently crickets in our comment section, but we're hoping that one day someone will talk to us and we won't just be screaming into the void.
And why not leave us a Halloween emoji if you're going to say hi and you can't think of what to say?
We appreciate you being here with us, and we hope you like this book as much as we did.
Happy Halloween, and we'll see you in another one really soon. Until next time,
happy reading!
Happy reading!